I'm very lucky. I don't know anybody who is suffering from kidney disease. I had a very frank conversation with a doctor at Transplant Manitoba that basically tried to talk me out of it, which I thought was really interesting. But now I understand why that person did that.
Make a difference and save someone's life. That's literally what you did. Do you remember how long surgery was?
Asking her to make that sacrifice to go and suddenly, have to take care of me. But something very strange happened when she was in Toronto.
They're thinking the worst. They're thinking the worst case scenario, and they're not looking at cases like yours and like mine.
Welcome to the Green Table Talk, where we will have open and honest discussion about transplant. I'm your host, Janine Johnson.
Nobody's ever asked me that before, so congratulations. I've been asked every single question, and you have actually asked one.
Today, I have my friend Ian Goodall-George here on the show. Ian, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I have you on the show today because I know your story and I love your story. And it's one of those feel-good stories. Like there's a lot of, things to unwrap here. So I said, you know what, I have to bring you on the show and have you share, because if it made me feel good and kind of teared me up as well, which I'm not going to cry today, so don't do it, Ian. Okay. If it made me tear up a bit, I figured, you know what, this is the type of story that we should definitely share. So
well, thank you for the opportunity, because I think my journey is certainly interesting, and it's nice to know that somebody else wants to hear it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Definitely. So before we get deep into your story, give me a little background knowledge about yourself. Tell me something about Ian. Let me know some of your favorite hobbies.
Sure. I'm closer to 40. I'm closer to 50 than I am to 48. So I'm almost that magic age. I'm married. I've been married for almost 25 years. I have two kids, an adult daughter. She's 20 and my son is 17. I've lived in the same community probably for about the last 25 years. So certainly kind of not willing to move.
Stability, nothing's wrong with stability. That's good.
Yeah. I used to play soccer year round, but I have gotten to that age where I can't compete against 18-year-olds anymore. So I finally have retired from that aspect, but I still try and remain active. But COVID has made that difficult for everybody. So I'm hoping that as we come out of this pandemic or go into the next stage of it, that I can get active again.
Of course, definitely. So we're going to talk about your decision to donate your kidney, right? So what I'd like to do is find out, let's just go back to the beginning. What made you decide to donate your kidney? Like, did you even contemplate kidney donation at any time in your life, or you just one day woke up, hey, I'm going to do this?
Well, it's a very interesting story, and I think people struggle to understand it, and it's not, it's kind of in different phases. But my earliest recollection of knowing anything about organ donation was probably when I was 7 or 8 years old. I was sitting at home with my dad and we were watching a TV show, and I wish I could remember what it was, but I can't. And this would have been, late 70s. So probably most people wouldn't even be able to remember the show. And it was a show, and they talked about, there was a family whose child had been in a terrible traffic accident, and there was no chance of survival. And the doctors in the show talked to the family about, organ donation and those options. And the family decided that would, to turn a really bad into a good. And so then the rest of the show basically followed this family and the decision and the impact that it had. And I watched it, and by the time it was over, it was way past my bedtime. So I thought my dad was going to scream at me to get to bed. But instead, he looked at me and he said, do you understand, what happened in that show? And in my 8 or 9-year-old mind, I sort of described back to him what I thought was happened. And he said, yeah. And he said he hoped that if I ever had that opportunity, or if I was ever in that difficult situation, that I would choose to be an organ donor or do something like that. So, and then you have to fast forward about 30 years. And I'm sitting at Canadian Blood Services, and I had just donated platelets, and I was having one of their wonderful donuts that they give you, and the absolutely horrible cup of coffee that they give you. And I saw a brochure on paired donor exchange, and had a look at it, and it was like I was instantly transported back, all those years, and I immediately said, well, this is something you have to do. So
now, before you continue, let me just
sure,
pause 1
go
second.
ahead.
So from when you had this conversation with your father up until 30 years later, the thought of donation, like donating an organ or anything of the sort, never came to mind. You had that great conversation, which, by the way, that's a great thing that your father stopped and took the time. Even though it was past your bedtime, he didn't freak out or anything, right?
Exactly.
He stopped and took the time to have this important conversation with you, right?
Yeah.
So since then, you never contemplated donation.
I think it was always something that was sitting in the back of my mind, and I don't know. My dad passed away about 6 years before I actually donated, and I think maybe his passing maybe kind of refreshed, when you lose somebody like that, you start thinking about some of your memories. So maybe that's when it was kind of a refresher and a kind of it kind of reminded me about some of those conversations that him and I had had. So, but really, no, you'd probably be right on you hit the nail on the head. I probably hadn't thought about it for over 30 years until I saw that brochure.
Okay. And at that time as well, within that time frame, nobody, came up to you, no friends of yours or nothing, family. Okay.
I'm very lucky. I don't know anybody who is suffering from kidney disease.
Yes. Okay. So now, fast forward, you see this brochure. You think maybe it's a sign. You're thinking.
Yeah, I grabbed the brochure. I probably wasn't supposed to take it. Drove to work. I'll fast forward. I won't go into all those details, but couldn't stop thinking about it. And then I was driving home and I realized that maybe this is something I should talk to my wife about. It might be one of those conversations. I can't just get on a plane and go away for 2 weeks and come back one less a kidney. Probably should talk to her about it.
Yes.
So we had that conversation, and it took a while to make the case, and it took a while for her to come around, but eventually it did. And
now, question: what was some of her concerns? You're going up to your wife and you're saying, "Hey, I'm thinking of donating a kidney to a random stranger." What was some of her concerns doing this? Like, what was she thinking?
I think that probably the same thing that lots of people who have that conversation with a significant other is, well, what if somebody in our family needs that kidney? You've suddenly given away the chance to help a loved one. And I think she was concerned about if I had given it enough thought and about my own health. But, we had long conversations about it. And I think she realized that, by donating this kidney, I was giving an opportunity to somebody else that, that just didn't have that opportunity. So, and there was no history of kidney disease in our family. So the chances of a loved one needing a kidney really weren't an issue.
And what about your children at that time? How old were they? Did they understand the concept that, you're thinking of giving away an organ?
I think my daughter did. She would have been 11. She probably would have been closer to 8 or 9 when I first started the discussion. And I don't know if my son really realized what was going on. So, and once my wife and I had decided to go ahead with it, that's when we had the discussion with them.
How did you discuss it with the 8-year-old?
Sort of the same way, I'm a funny parent. I don't talk down to my kids. I talk to them like they're adults. I mean, I don't use big fancy words, but I don't simplify things for them. I try to explain it as I would an adult. So I probably explained to her the exact same way. This is a way of helping somebody else. And at that time, we didn't know it was a child. So I was just saying, we were helping somebody else.
And that's important too, because yes, your child is 8, but she needs to be able to understand what daddy's about to do, right? And just trying to, water it down doesn't really help the scenario anyways, right? So that's good that you spoke to her as an adult one-on-one. So that's perfect. So now everybody's on board. You decided you're going to go ahead and you're going to donate. What did you do at this point?
Well, I reached out to Transplant Manitoba because I do live in Manitoba. I probably should have said that. And there's a cooling off period. You make an inquiry and then, they send you some information about the process and all that. And then about a month after you are sent that information, you're given the option to contact them and proceed with the process. So I obviously was still on board at that time. So we met with them, had some discussions with them, had a very frank conversation with a doctor at Transplant Manitoba that basically tried to talk me out of it, which I thought was really interesting. But now I understand why that person did that. Then went through a whole ton of testing, and we actually didn't. That I was approved to donate, and then we kind of paused it because there was some stuff going on in the family. So so then the second time that I had indicated I was interested in donating, it was a much quicker process. So
okay. Now it's interesting that you mentioned that the doctor tried to talk you out of it. It was a doctor, right, that tried to talk you out of it, because something similar happened on my end. And so when my donor went ahead and she was going through the process, the doctor came back. Several people actually came back and tried to, kind of ease it out of her. So if you change your mind, it's okay. We'll let, Janine, we'll make something up basically and let Janine know that you've decided not to, or we'll finesse it in a nice way, basically. Yeah. Right. Why do you think that happens? Because you said now you understand why the doctor was doing that. Why do you think that? Because it's not the first time that's happened.
No, and I mean, you certainly, part of the workup is talking to a psychologist and ensuring that you're making this decision. And I think the doctor does it to be quite frank and to let you know. And I mean, this doctor said that he would never donate a kidney unless it was for his kids. Like he said, he would never do it to. He would never be an anonymous donor. He would never make a donation to anybody but his specific family members. So.
Wow.
And I should probably add that there was a lot of people trying to talk me out of it, and a lot of people who were not in support of me being an organ donor. So that was probably the most difficult thing to deal with. But my family was supporting it, so that was what was important to me.
That's the important part. Do you think that they weren't, besides your family members, do you think that they were not supportive, like whomever was, like whichever friends or whomever wasn't supported? Is it because of lack of knowledge about donating? Because I know there's a lot of fear, a lot of, skepticism and myths and what have you. Oh, it's going to reduce your own lifespan. Oh, all of a sudden, like, what I mean? There's a lot of lack of knowledge going on out there.
That's exactly what it is. It's a lack of knowledge about the process and the risks and the benefits to it, and people just really not willing to have the discussion or even entertain discussing it. People just like it's unfortunate. I think that a lot of people are at a point now where unless they see a direct benefit for themselves, they don't step out of that comfort zone.
Yes.
And I think that's what a lot of the people around me were just like, well, what are you getting from this? And they didn't seem to understand that, there wasn't a need to get anything from it. It was an ability to help somebody else. So,
wow. Yeah, it has to be, you're doing it for a reason, right? You're doing it to get money, right? You're doing it for, I don't know, fame and fortune or something. But just the thought that
I got to the point where I started to just tell people, well, I was doing it to get a free T-shirt, and that's at least would make people laugh, and then then you could have the conversation. But no, it's funny. It's and I don't know if things are different in Ontario or other parts of the country, but it's still a topic that nobody wants to talk about until they're faced with those life and death decisions.
Of course. How did you feel when the doctor told you that? When the doctor literally came out and said, "Oh, by the way, I wouldn't do what you're doing." I mean, he's a doctor, right? So
I actually think I burst out laughing.
Okay.
But I'm a very strange person, and I just looked him in the eye and I said, "Well, that's you and not me." Like I wasn't. Maybe he was doing it to try and see if he could intimidate me, but my mind was made up at that point. So
that's good. I'm glad you stuck to your guns and you didn't let the doctor encourage you to do otherwise, because it could have been a completely different outcome, right, for that innocent child. So hats off to you.
Thank you.
So let's go back to your story. So you're going ahead, you're going through the workup. What were you thinking at this point in time? Because I know the workup is it's lengthy, it's strenuous, it's a lot of blood work. It's, you know what I mean? So what were you thinking at that point? Were you thinking at any, what am I doing?
I was getting quite excited. Every time I would pass the next stage of it, and it was getting more and more real to me. So it was never. I never got paperwork about going for a test and thinking, oh, okay, well, I don't want to do that. So no, it was exciting to me.
Good. See, that we need more people like you out there. That's good. So when did you find out that there's someone that you'll be donating to. And when you found out it was a little girl, like, how did that, walk me through that process?
I was actually driving to a meeting, and the transplant coordinator at Transplant Manitoba called me, and she said, we're about to run, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the algorithm that they run. They put all of the people who are living donors in, and they try and match them up with the people. She said they're running one in Ontario in a few weeks, and we're definitely putting your name in, so you'll be matched with somebody sooner than later. And then I think they ran it, and then I got a call probably almost exactly 2 weeks later, and they said, okay, we've matched you with somebody, and we're setting your surgery date for, and I won't say the date, but
Yes.
we're setting your surgery date. And it unfortunately was about 4 months earlier than what I had said that I was available to donate. So
Oh, wow.
I kind of had a, oh crap moment, and sort of, but immediately said, well, I'm not going to say no simply because it doesn't work with my work schedule. So I then had to have a difficult discussion with my boss and say, that thing we talked about, well, it's going to happen a lot sooner than we thought.
Were they supportive about it? Was your boss and the company supportive?
Not at first, no.
Okay.
He actually said that he said, well, you can't take the time off then. And I just said,
Wow.
well, I can certainly go over your head. And then I got about 3 feet out of his office, and I think he realized that,
You were
I was
serious.
going to go over his head, and that would look bad for him. So it changed his mind pretty quick. So, yeah. So, and I don't think I was supposed to ever know that it was a little girl that I was donating to. And I think the transplant coordinator accidentally let that slip out, or maybe she intentionally did. I don't know. So, I mean, that just made it a little bit more special for me. The fact that it was going to this child, and I guess the transplant date moved up so much because this person was so sick, and that's what she shared with me. She says, we can't wait another 4 months. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So back to your work situation. When you came back from surgery, was there any type of, attitude or any type of, feeling kind of weird at work now because you took the time off, your boss didn't really want you to, and you kind of said, hey, listen, I'm going to go behind your back above your head regardless. So
it's funny. I think because then after I came back, I think it sort of leaked out that I had done this, because literally a handful of people, 5 people probably knew I was doing this until after I had done it. So information had leaked out that I'd done it, and I think that there was quite a groundswell of support for the fact that I had done it. So I think he realized that he should probably join that groundswell. So no, there was never any issue when I came back. And he actually, when I did come back, he said, well, if you need more time off, feel free to take more time off. So
okay.
And I'm very lucky. I work for the province of Manitoba, and I had more than enough sick time. So
that's good. I'm glad he joined in. That's very good. So surgery day. This is the day now. You're going to go in for surgery. You're about to literally save a little girl's life. What's going through your mind at this point?
It's hard. I remember it, but I was sort of almost in a fog because, it suddenly becomes real. And I remember, getting up super early the day of the surgery, and my wife and I walking down to the hospital. The hotel that we were staying at was a couple blocks from the hospital. And, every step it was becoming more and more real. And then sitting in the waiting room, waiting to go back to, where they get you ready for surgery or whatever. Every second it became a little bit more real. And then I think once I was ready to get wheeled into the operating room, I must have had the biggest smile on my face, because it wasn't that people were looking at me funny, but I think, you get asked that question so many times, you can back out, you don't have to go through with this. It's not too late. And I was like, nope. So, yeah, it's almost an undescribable feeling knowing that you're just about to be able to help somebody out like that. So
make a difference and save someone's life. That's literally what you did. Do you remember how long surgery was?
No, but I think it was 4 hours.
Okay, gotcha.
So not very long at all. No.
So how long was recovery? Now you're out of surgery. You're recovering. Did you stay here? Because you said you're from Manitoba. So did you stay here recovered most of the time, or what was that? How did that work?
I was in hospital for 4 days, 3 nights, something like
Mhm.
that. So yeah, so not very long. And I pleaded with the doctor to let me go back to the hotel. So, and then we stayed at the hotel for a few days, and then we flew back to Manitoba. The first week was pretty rough. But as soon as I got home, every day I felt better and better, and I
Good.
was pretty much ready to do things I shouldn't be doing probably after about 2 weeks. So a lot of yelling from my wife as I was doing things that she knew I shouldn't be doing. But
Mhm.
and it was really great because we had never had so much snow as we had the 6 weeks that I was trying to recover. So I just kept looking out at the driveway and realizing that, I had to phone somebody up to clean my driveway. So
Yes,
feeling
of
feeling a
course.
little guilty about that. So,
I mean, hey, you just had surgery, so it's okay. It's okay.
yeah.
Let me ask you about when you were staying in Toronto. Like, so in terms of hotel accommodations and in terms of like, was that out of pocket or was there a program in place to cover those?
Unfortunately, in Manitoba, when I made the donation, there was a program to assist with those costs, but it was always after the fact and
Okay.
months and months after the fact, 6 or 7 months after the fact, you were reimbursed. So all of those costs were on my credit card, or
Mm,
so it took a while to have them reimbursed, and there was many costs that were never reimbursed. So
okay. Okay.
and I know that there's the program in Ontario is significantly different and much better program at
Yes.
reimbursing those costs. So
Hmm. Yeah,
so
it's very good here. Like they will reimburse the cost. And I think to some extent, don't quote me on this one, I think they actually, they would pay upfront for the cost of hotel and what have you. So it's very good. It's very good
yeah,
that way.
I actually joined the Kidney Foundation in Manitoba because I was so upset about that. I wanted to see that changed.
Hmm.
Um,
We were
but
actually,
I
I was going to talk to you about that too, actually.
eventually gave up because, you can just run into a brick wall so many times before you
I know.
finally realize that it hurt and you shouldn't do it
Mhm.
anymore.
It is frustrating. It is frustrating. But the fact that you joined the Kidney Foundation and you made an amazing video, which we're going to show a clip of it today. I think that right there, that made a difference. It might not have made the difference that you initially wanted, but the video, it's a great video. Like, tell me how that come about. Did they just reach out to you and say, "Hey, let's tell your story," or how did that come about?
Yeah, I was the only person on the board that had ever had any experience with kidney donation, which I thought was really weird. Like
Mhm.
I mean, and I think the Kidney Foundation exists for very specific reasons, and they're not so much talking about the donation part. They're talking about research and they're talking about
Mhm.
prevention and all those sort of things. So I think the fact that I had an experience was beneficial, and they asked if I could make the video, and I was more than happy. There was a much better video made, funny story, and then something happened with the video and it was lost. So then we had to reshoot it like in 2 hours. So I wish that the previous video survived because it was so much more better and impactful.
Mhm.
Because that one was so rushed. I think we filmed that in like 40 minutes in a hotel
Honestly,
lobby.
it does not even
Uh,
look rushed. I was watching it and like I got literally your whole story from it. I felt the story, so it didn't seem, whoever put together, they did a good job because it
yeah, they
didn't
did a
seem
great
rushed at
job.
all.
Yeah.
But what we're going to do now is just show a little clip of the video. So here we go.
I hope you're never faced with having to make that decision, but if you ever are, I hope you would decide to make a difference in people's lives and give back. Flash forward about 30 plus years, I was at Canadian Blood Services donating platelets, and I was eating that fantastic chocolate covered donut they give you and that horrible cup of coffee. And I saw a brochure about paired donor exchange, basically the opportunity to be a living donor. So I grabbed the brochure and I read through it, and I was hooked. I don't know if I was supposed to take the brochure, but I did. We went to Toronto and made the donation. I think she saw how much of a difference it made in somebody's life and how much of a huge, just a huge experience, a life-changing thing that it was. So she went from, certainly being supportive of it to just being a huge cheerleader and just being absolutely over the world excited and happy that the opportunity was given to us.
Ian, that's a great video. Like I
Thank
said,
you.
it shares your story right to the point, and you can't tell it was rushed. Whoever did it, they did a really good job. I mean, I believe that the other one was good too, but I'm quite happy with this one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I wish it would get a few more views. Every time I check on it, it's got like 13 views. So like I joked, it hasn't exactly gone viral, but
you know what? After this airs,
yeah, maybe it will.
It's gonna go viral.
It's gonna go
no
viral.
Problem. I want to talk to you about your wife. I'm assuming she was your caregiver during this process, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Now, how did that work for your wife? Like, I'm not certain. Was she working at the same time, or like, did that take a toll on her? Like, how did being a caregiver, how did that affect her? Seeing you in pain and seeing her husband go through all of this. How did that affect her?
That's a fantastic question, because it's funny. She unfortunately is on disability, so she has been on permanent disability for almost 12 years. So she'd been on disability about 4 years before I made the donation. It wasn't difficult for her to go with me, but it did complicate the decision for me to donate, because she wasn't well herself. So asking her to make that sacrifice to go and suddenly have to take care of me. But something very strange happened when she was in Toronto. She actually felt better.
Oh.
And she had no relief from her illness for years. And the time in Toronto, actually, she said it's the best that she's felt in 2 decades.
That's amazing. That's good.
And she says she contributes that to the fact that, she felt like she was part of the donation process. She felt like she was contributing, and she certainly was. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do it without her. And it gave her the strength to, and it made her feel physically and mentally better. So, it was a very unexpected positive spin-off of the donation. So,
wow.
Yeah. And because she was on disability, we just hung out at home for 6 weeks, and it was fun.
That's amazing. That's really amazing.
And I got to yell at my kids and get them to do stuff they never would have thought of doing before, but now they had to do it. So
that's great. So let me ask you, do you feel that this whole process from when you were younger and you saw that video, or you're watching that movie with your dad, up until when you came here to Toronto, your wife felt better. She hasn't felt better in decades, literally decades. Do you think this whole process was like spiritually driven? Do you feel it was just sheer luck? Do you feel it was just, it was meant to happen, and what will be will be? Like, how do you think this whole thing came to be?
I don't know. Nobody's ever asked me that before. So congratulations. I've been asked every single question, and you have actually asked one. I don't know. I grew up in a home where my parents taught my brother and I to always look for ways to give back.
Yes.
So that was they didn't have a lot of rules, but that was one of the rules, was you always tried to give more than you took. And they also taught us at times we had to take assistance as well too.
Of course.
But I don't know. I think it's I'm not an extremely spiritual person. I believe in high other deities. I believe that there's other things out there that are controlling things. But how I happen to be the match with this little girl in Toronto that I have nothing, and they said it was a match like they had never seen such a close match. Because this little girl was so sick that she needed a match that was so close, or it wouldn't have worked. And I was a perfect match. So how does that happen without there being some sort of something at work? Do you know what I mean? Like that's and of course my wife asked me. She figured out how old the girl was, and she said, "Were you in Toronto? 2 years and 9 months ago?" But that was a joke. But So. So I think it was partly just the right things coming together, and this sounds funny, but I am as thankful for the opportunity to do this as I'm sure the person's parents are thankful that I did it. I see this as I'm very thankful for given the opportunity to do it. So it was partly maybe karma for me for payback for some good things I had done that was given this opportunity, and just things worked out. So that probably wasn't a good answer to your question, but
no, it was. It was. Basically, everything happens for a reason. You feel that there
yeah.
is something out there, whether it was, a divine hand or what have you, something out there just kind of put everything into place, because that's hard to find someone that close of a match and you're not even related. You know what I mean? That doesn't
well,
happen
the sad thing is if there's a perfect match for every single person that needs a kidney. It's just those people need to step forward, or those people
Yes.
need to be educated about the opportunity. I mean,
Yes.
there's no lack of the kidneys that we need in this country. It's a
Mhm.
lack of, and I'm getting on my soapbox here, but it's a lack of understanding about how tiny of a sacrifice it is to make that big of a difference in somebody's life.
Yes.
And I struggle to understand why there aren't more people stepping forward, because it's such a simple thing to do.
And like you
And
said, that you hit the nail on the head. It's lack of knowledge, it's lack of education, because people are thinking they're thinking the worst. They're thinking the worst case scenario, and they're not looking at cases like yours and like mine that, you can actually make a difference and it doesn't affect you. Like the most it affects you, of course, you're not gonna be 100% right out of surgery, but who really is 100% out of surgery? You know what I mean?
exactly.
So that's what it is. It needs to be more education out there.
And it's frustrating. I when I first donated the kidney, I didn't really want to talk about it, and then because I received so many negative comments from people that said, "Why did you do it?" I said, "Well, there's a need to educate people," and I really started to push to try and be given opportunities to speak about organ donation, and it still hasn't. 8 years down the road, it still hasn't panned out. Like I can count on one hand the number of times that I've been asked to share my story. That's why I was so happy and so excited when you invited me to, because I see this as an opportunity to finally start talking about it and making some changes. So
of course, because you have to educate. That's all it boils down to. We have to educate, because I know there's a lot of people out there who's, like I said, thinking the negative and not thinking about the positive. And I'm sure that little girl, she's very happy you donated, and so is her family, right? Do you know anything?
And I think about it all the time. It's probably a question that you're going to ask me, so I should probably wait for you to ask me. But I have never made an attempt to reach out to see if there's a letter from the family. And people say, "Well, why didn't you?" Because that would be the first thing they would do. But I am down to my core scared that something has happened to that little child, and that they, that they're no longer with us. And I think that would be really difficult for me to deal with. But on this other side of the coin, people have said to me that, even if you gave that little girl 3 or 4 years, that's
3 or 4 years that she wouldn't have had without you.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm coming up to that birthday, and I'm thinking that might be the gift that I give myself is to make that call to Transplant Manitoba and see if there was ever a letter sent.
I think you should. Always think the positive. Always think the positive, because it's easy for us to think about the negative. But if you thought the negative and you were listening to all the negative that everybody was saying to you, we wouldn't be here right now, because you wouldn't have donated. And, heaven forbid, something else worse could have happened to that innocent little girl. Right. So I think you should give yourself that gift.
But another part of me says to myself, and I know we're getting a little off topic here, but do you really need that letter?
First of all, this is your episode, so we can talk about anything you want. First of all.
But yeah.
Secondly, I don't think it's a matter of need. I think it's just to
closure.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's exactly what it is. It's closure. And even if, heaven forbid, which is not the case, but even if she only had an extra 4 or 5 years, that was given to her by you. Nobody else. You did that for her. But I know that's not the case anyway. She's fine. She's thriving. She's probably listening to BTS and all those other groups out there that all these kids like, so she's fine. She's fine.
There is one thing. I know it's funny that you said this is my podcast. I don't see it that way, but there's a story that I have never shared with anybody, but I think this might be a good time to share it. I'll go through it as quickly as I can. But so the day that I came home from the hospital, I wasn't feeling good. We had walked a couple blocks to the hotel, and my wife was starving, so she went out and grabbed a bite to eat, and I went back to the hotel room. And then I remembered them saying, the more that you're up and you're walking around after the surgery, the easier your recovery will be. So I said, well, I should try and walk around, but don't really want to walk around in Toronto when you don't know Toronto, especially. So I found it was like a floor. It was like, I guess between the first and second floor of this hotel, there's all these banquet halls.
Okay.
So I went down and I found it, and I started to walk around, and I ended up walking for 2 hours around this loop of these banquet halls. And that was the point at which what I had done finally sunk in. And it was like a life-changing moment for me. I suddenly went from this not being a big deal and this being something that, that I've done, and now I'm going to move on with the rest of my life, to realizing that maybe what I had just done, not a calling, but it was something that was important enough in my life that I shouldn't let go of it, and that I should continue to pursue it. And I go back to that moment a lot when I'm struggling with things, and it almost, kind of centers me, and it says, you did that and you moved on from it and you made a difference, and there's nothing to say that you can't keep making those differences in your life. So but until you experience something like that, I've thought about telling that story before, but I think people would struggle with that. But probably you're somebody that they wouldn't struggle that. You would probably understand that kind of aha moment where you realize something like that. So,
well, first of all, thank you for sharing. I appreciate you sharing that. I feel very privileged that I got this inside scoop. So thank you very much for sharing that with us here. And yes, I definitely understand what you're talking about. 150%. Shortly after I received my transplant, I was just like, okay, I need to do more. I can't just take this gift, a new lease on life, literally a new lease on life, and just sit back and do nothing. You know what I mean? And so I started trying to figure out, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I am spiritual. And so I took the time and I prayed, and I'm like, just show me the way. Like, what do you want me to do? And then all of a sudden I got brought into the advisory group, just out of the blue. Just got into the advisory group. People reached out to me. Then Paula, she reached out. Actually, it was Courtney, who's no longer with the organization, but she reached out to me on Paula's request. There's this girl, I want you to find her. Just go look her up on Facebook or something. And so all of a sudden I'm in, the action committee, and I felt fulfilled. I felt like this is what I'm supposed to do. This was my aha moment. You know what I mean? This is what I'm supposed to do. And then all of a sudden, the Green Table Talk comes along, and here we are sharing these stories, sharing, everyone's journey on their kidney transplant or donation or what have you. And all I did was just take the time to just ask, reflect, think. That was my version of you walking around in circles for 2.5 hours and everything became clear to you. That was my version of it. Yeah. And so I understand exactly where you're coming from.
And I think if people can hear that message and how it changes your life, I think there might be more people who would step forward, because let's be honest, we're looking for those sort of things in life right now. Yes. There's so much bad things going on in the world, and so many things that we are out of our control that we just feel helpless. But this is something that we have control over, that we can make a difference. So, and it's funny, I this is scary to say, but one of my first thoughts after I started to feel better was, you can donate part of your liver as well, Ian. And I've been trying to do that now for 8 years, and I'm hoping in the next couple of years I'm able to finally do that, because to me that would be the final piece of the puzzle. And but
my friend crossed. Is addicted. You're addicted to giving. That's a good thing.
So if they did liver donations in Manitoba, I think my chances would be better, because being in Manitoba and trying to make the connection with the liver program in Ontario is difficult. But I haven't given up hope.
Don't give up, my friends. It's very possible. Have you spoken to your wife about this? Does she know that you're thinking?
Oh, yeah, she knows. She's saying, "What else are you going to give away?" So
let's give away some blood, give away a liver, a kidney.
Exactly.
What else, right?
Yeah,
that's amazing. That is amazing, and I'm happy that you're happy and healthy, and you just You're a great man. That's the best way. That's the best
Oh,
way to
shucks.
describe it.
I'm
You're
not.
a great man. You're a great man,
No.
Ian. You didn't let everyone's negativity get to you, which is paramount, because I had the same thing. I was told, a lot of negative stuff as well, but you didn't let it get to you. You stood your ground. You had your family behind you. They stood by you. Your wife, your amazing wife, was there during your process. She was your caregiver. She felt better, when she came to Toronto.
And I got a
Everything
free
was-
T-shirt.
Right?
That's all I wanted was that free T-shirt, and I got it. So I mean,
That's your bonus right there.
It was worth the trip.
See, everything fell into place. And it's all because of a conversation you had that resonated, stuck in your mind so many years later from your father,
Yeah.
which is, I think that's all a blessing. Everything fell into place perfectly for you. And because of this, you're going to end up donating your liver, and we're going to bring you back on the
Well,
show.
yeah, let's hope so. If you know anybody that can help me with that, I'd appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, you can't do that. But
Yeah. You know what? I think that like I said, you're a great man, Ian. Thank you
Thank you.
very much for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your story and being honest and frank and candid with us. I really appreciate this. Really
well,
appreciate
thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for all of the people who I can't name that were part of the journey that that helped me along the way and helped make it happen. Because truly, I am blessed that I was given this opportunity to do this. So
Mhm.
I'm as happy about that as I'm sure, like I said, the family that got the kidney is. So I'm a lucky
Yeah.
person.
And I'm glad you saw it as a blessing. I'm glad you saw it as a blessing, because everything that you've done this entire journey literally has been a blessing to yourself. Your blessings fall upon your children as well. Your good luck will rub off on them. And then it's also impacting the wonderful little girl who's waiting for you to pick up that letter and read it. So that's how I see it. And that's just my opinion. So usually at this point in time, I will take a moment to share a little nugget of knowledge, little words of wisdom, and your story just literally made me want to reinstate the fact that everything you say to a child, words are powerful. So everything that you say to a child can literally have long-lasting effects. So please, let's take the time to choose our words wisely and be careful as to what we say to our kids, because it can affect them. And you're a prime example of this. So thank you very much for joining us here on Your Brain Table Talk. Thank you very much, Ian, for joining us and sharing your story. And we hope to see you back again next time. Take care.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.